Good morning. This is the Motivational webcast. They can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also learn about us and find us on uh, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information about previous shows and future shows on my website, which is behind me, blainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce a second-time guest, and he is Lyndon Harris, the forgiveness coach, motivational speaker, and author, being my guest today. Welcome aboard, Lyndon.
Thanks. Thank you, Blaine. It's good to be back with you. I
Likewise.
really enjoyed being with you before, and it's good to be back.
And by the way, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So this is, give them a big wave.
Hello, everybody.
Excellent. Lyndon Harris, I should mention, is a motivational speaker, forgiveness coach, and workshop leader who came kicking, I love it, kicking, screaming to the world work of forgiveness. His journey to forgiveness began at ground zero on the morning of September 11th, 2001, and has taken him around the world to, you name it, just about anywhere. And so let me ask you this question to start off. Remind me, as a kid, you grew up where?
I grew up in South Carolina, upstate Gaffney, South Carolina, home of the Peachoid.
And when you grew up in South Carolina, did you always know you wanted to be a motivational speaker, a forgiveness coach? Was that what you wanted to do as a kid?
And no, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Well, you still have time, right?
Yeah.
They're sending up people. Who is it? It's going up fairly soon. They don't have to be a kid anymore, be an astronaut.
Well, we live by hope, don't we?
Yeah. So what happened? So you want to be an astronaut? What got you away from that?
Well, life did, and my inability to pass my classes as an engineering major in college.
That kind of gave you an indication that maybe you shouldn't be an astronaut.
I switched to philosophy, and that led me down this path, which I'm happy it did. I went to Wofford College in Spartanburg and majored in philosophy and became an Episcopal priest, which was really my lifelong dream after I became an adult, and served as an Episcopal priest for many years. Moved to New York City to do a doctoral program in theology because I've always loved teaching and I wanted to teach at a seminary somewhere. That's what took me to New York.
So it's interesting though. So you become an astronaut, then you went to become a priest, but you're not a priest at this point in time. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
got you away from that field?
Well, after 9/11, my life fell apart. I should tell you a little bit about 9/11. So I moved to New York City, and long story short, I was in a doctoral program and I also had to work because it's pretty expensive up in New York. I had to have a lot of side hustles to help pay the bills and cover all kinds of things. And I got an invitation by Trinity Church on Wall Street to join the staff to start something called the St. Paul's Initiative. And the St. Paul's Initiative was to create at historic St. Paul's Chapel right there in the financial district, an alternative worship service, contemporary service that would draw a younger crowd in. St. Paul's Chapel was kind of moribund. It was, it's a 300-year-old church. It was George Washington's church when he was inaugurated as president of the U.S. He went there that day to pray and was there on occasion. There's a pew dedicated in his honor there that he would come to. And then, 9/11 happened, and that's where my journey to forgiveness began. I was at the foot of the South Tower when the second airplane hit the South Tower and exploded into, that craziness. And I had to run, dodging debris to save my life, really. And so the next day, I went back down to St. Paul's Chapel trying to figure out how we might help out. I mean, you may remember the images of the big pile of twisted, gnarly steel. And we assumed there were survivors still alive inside the site. And so, it became all hands on deck trying to see how quickly we could get through that mess and rescue any survivors. I helped set up a rescue mission of a food service initially to serve the needs of the folks at Ground Zero. We set up some grills out front of the church, and that one thing led to another that grew into other services. Before it was all over, in 8.5 months, we went on 8.5 months. Before it was all over, we had massage therapy, we had chiropractic care, we had musicians, beautiful, amazing musicians playing 3 and 4 concerts a day. We had grief therapy, we had worship services. Um, Gosh, we kind of did it all. We had supplies. And I was running this mission, overseeing it. It was 24/7 for 8.5 months. So pretty much wore us all out. And I was also going into the site doing last rites on body bags.
Reminds me of some of the experience, I guess, that people went through also with this recent hurricane, in terms of
Yeah.
having
Oh
to
my
endure
gosh.
that. But back to you. So you're
Yeah.
doing this for 8.5 months. So I guess it had to affect you personally, though, did it?
Oh, I was diagnosed by the World Trade Center Health Registry as having PTSD and depression and a bunch of different things wrong with my sinuses and my lungs. I think I'm okay now. That I'm been monitoring nonstop. Every year I have a physical and that sort of thing. I'm one of the lucky ones. But it took a toll on me, and anytime you start some kind of service like this in your church, it's really outside the box, right? So there was automatically some conflict that I had with my supervisors, and long story short, after it was over, I resigned and had to move on. But since I had to do that, I was really bitter about that and angry. And I had so much grief and trauma. And that became my life's obsession over the next decade. I struggled mightily. This is what I mean when I say I came kicking and screaming to forgiveness. Because I thought I had it all figured out, but I didn't have a clue until I had to do the work of forgiveness myself.
Talk about the work
So,
itself, if you would. So how long did it take you to get to the point of, if you will, where you are now?
well, it's taken me 20 years, really. I mean, I started teaching and talking about forgiveness, more than a decade ago, but I guess maybe about 5, 6 years ago, it really took root in my heart. And that's when my teaching and my speaking and all that really became a little more profound. Before that, I was teaching the stuff, but wasn't practicing it in my own life as much as I should have or could have. And finally, you realize that forgiveness means making peace with the word no. We all are going to get a no from life. Sometimes we'll get a big no, sometimes a little no. You didn't get the job, someone else got it. You didn't get the chicken salad sandwich, you got the pimento cheese. They're both no's. And even if you never have any big no, we're all going to get the biggest no of all because we're all going to die. As one of the comedians puts it, biggest problem with life is none of us are going to get out alive.
By the way,
And my spiral downward, I lost everything.
let me have you repeat that, though. I just love that expression. And by the way, I think you mentioned to me off the air you're working on, I guess, your life story. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's going to be, is that going to be the title for it? But what a great title. What was that line again? Forgiveness is what was it?
Forgiveness is making peace with the word no.
What a great concept, though.
Yeah.
I guess my problem is I've never really thought about it. I guess most people have never thought about it.
It's counterintuitive. We don't think about it. We think about revenge. We
Right.
think about getting even, or we think about being a victim. This is my problem. I spent a decade saying, look what they did to me. Look how they treated me. Nelson Mandela said that not to forgive is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemies to die from it. And I was drinking the poison. But you know what, Blaine? I'm honest, I have to tell you, it tasted really good to me because I got a lot of support drinking that poison. But here's the problem. When you drink poison, a part of you is going to die. and a part of me died. And it took me a long time to figure that out. It's just a part of the grief and the trauma, coming to grips with that. So I lost my marriage, I lost a house in foreclosure, I lost my job, I lost my career. I the stuff going on with my health, and then ultimately I had to file for bankruptcy. So I just spiraled, I hit the bottom, and the only thing that made any sense to me at all, three things really: the kindness and mercy of a loving God that I believe in, and the kindness and compassion of loving friends who held on to me and wouldn't let go of me, and this power of forgiveness to help us make peace with a no so that we can move forward in our lives. You know, when I coach people on forgiveness, my first question to them is, so where are you stuck? Where are you stuck? Because that's where your forgiveness issue often can be found. Like the kid on the playground on the monkey bars, if you're hanging in the middle of the monkey bars and you're stuck there, the only way you can move forward is to let go of one behind you and reach to the next one in front of you, right? That's what it means to make peace with no and move forward.
By the way, you're coming up with a great concept. You don't even know it, but I could see this, Lyndon, if that was part of your speeches.
Yeah.
You just described it was so visual. Even if
Mm.
they had a videotape of you crossing monkey bars.
Oh, it's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
No,
Yeah.
but I'm getting a chill. But what a great idea!
Yeah.
Because you really now I understand it. It just
Yeah.
made it very visual. But can you
Yeah.
imagine you're coming into a group, and
Hmm.
somehow if you came in,
Yeah.
well, I'd go crazy if
Yeah.
I saw that. But what a great idea!
And here's the thing. You can hang on the monkey bars as long as you want. I mean, until you fall off, but you're still not getting anywhere. The decision to forgive is up to you. It's up to me. And we don't have to do it. We can choose to be miserable.
Well, we'll talk about this then, because I find it fascinating, and that's when I knew I wanted to have you again on the show. So you contend, I guess that's I love the title of forgiveness coach, and I don't know if there are a lot
Yeah.
of other are there other forgiveness coaches out there? I haven't seen too many, but what a great concept.
I don't know. I don't know of maybe one or two.
So can you teach forgiveness?
Yes. Forgiveness is a teachable skill, just like learning to throw a baseball. In fact, that's the best way to learn it. You don't get it intuitively. It's counterintuitive. We tend to be wired for revenge. Someone does something to me, we're going to do something back to them. In fact, the research demonstrates this so clearly that with doing the brain scans, there was a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University before he retired, Ev Worthington. He did this study looking at brain scans of people and asked some questions about, unresolved grievances or revenge. And he found out that when people think about revenge, the pleasure pathways of the brain are the ones that light up. The same ones that light up when we eat chocolate. Sweet revenge, right?
By the
But
way,
the problem with revenge is there ain't no future in it.
as you talk about this, I don't know if you see it, but I'm seeing it. I see
Yeah.
this also something you should be doing in your presentations, bringing in chocolate. You know, no,
Yeah.
I'm
There
serious.
you go.
People will relate to
I'm
it.
going to hire you as a presentation coach.
No, but I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
These great concepts and have
Yeah.
to make them visual. So you do a
Yeah.
good job explaining it. But can you imagine everybody, was eating chocolate or you gave out chocolate?
Yeah.
I love the idea. So
Yeah.
going back to forgiveness,
Yeah.
so people, I guess part of the problem is that they don't even know, I guess, they don't even think of the term forgiveness. You don't usually think of the term too much. It's like counter intuitive. So how do people know that they need to learn forgiveness? When do you reach that point?
You know, uh, it's different with different people. I mean, some people never get there, Blaine. I mean, it took me, 15 years. Some people get it almost automatically. I don't know what the alchemy of that is, but one of the reasons we don't get it so quickly is we don't understand it. When we hear forgiveness, we think forgive and forget, but it's not that. It's forgive and remember differently.
Right.
You know, it's reframing your story. You can be a victim in your story, or you can be the hero in your story. And if you're always talking about what they did to me, how bad I was treated, even if you're drinking the poison, it may taste good, but it's not leading you anywhere. You're still stuck on the monkey bars. But if you decide to step out of that and to work through it on a forgiveness level, you earn the right to rewrite your destiny. You have
Well,
a new possibility.
it's one of the keys I can imagine listening to you though, is when you see somebody and you're just the opposite, but if somebody always has a frown or a smile or or a grimace or is always miserable,
Yeah.
probably a good tip that they're not forgiving in life.
Well, that could be a lot of different things. I mean, they could have just been assaulted or something,
Yeah.
it's hard to say. But, I think we are maybe either inclined towards optimism or pessimism. It's hard to say. I think we seem to be wired for revenge because that was a part of the survival of our species so long ago. But we thrive when we're able to embrace the positive psychological virtues of forgiveness and compassion and kindness. And we create space for the future when we do that.
Well, it's it, even speaking to you, Lyndon, I've seen it in the past, you have this like great smile, you just have this great act.
Oh, thank you.
No, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, I would imagine people who aren't forgiving, and I know some people just like that with from the war or whatever the case is, they don't
Yeah.
have that smile on their face. They're not, they're, it's very tough. They're suffering from PTSD, but they never get beyond
Yeah.
it, you know.
Right.
So can you work with people? I guess that's one of the things you do. You can work with somebody who has PTSD and help them get beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm first of all, let me say I'm not a clinician. I'm a
Right.
coach. So I don't do therapy. Technically, I don't do therapy. I should just say it that way. I'm not a trauma clinician, but I'm a forgiveness coach. And what we've discovered is that people in trauma, people suffering with PTSD, me being one in both of those categories, can benefit significantly from learning about forgiveness. Because all the studies show, Blaine, I mean, the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, it is so clear, the research is so clear that forgiveness is good for us on a par with quitting smoking. That's significant. And we just need to learn what it means to forgive. And that's where my friend Fred Luskin, Dr. Fred Luskin at Stanford University, he's co-founded and directs the Stanford Forgiveness Project. And he wrote a book, Forgive for Good, a proven prescription for health and happiness. And he helped us see that by learning these tools of forgiveness, we can live happier, better uh, uh, lives. We can thrive. We can be in flow. We can just be at peace. When we are carrying around grudges, our immune system is challenged. Our nervous system is on overload. Uh, One thing we can do is to find ways, and we have suggestions in our workbook on forgiveness about how you can sort of regulate your nervous system through meditation and through exercises that we have. I mean, if you're carrying around a grudge and you're hostile, you're more likely to have a heart attack in that state. And it's just, and we've all known people who have been just angry, mean people. And, certainly on any given day, any one of us, including myself, could be that person. But life is more than just anger. If you're only angry, to the hammer, everything's a nail. You can't see outside of your anger. Anger is a good emotion. It can save your life. But if you hang on to it too long, it's like battery acid that can eat through the container that it's in.
And what you said is just a perfect segue. If we can, you mentioned the workbook. Can you maybe
Hmm.
you have a copy there? Could you hold up for us
Yeah,
if you would?
yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about this. So one of the things I love the title of it, the Forgive for Good Recovery Workbook, subtitle, Overcoming Addiction, Heal Your Past, and Find Peace in Sobriety. So talk about this book. So you wrote this with, you mentioned Dr. Luskin?
Yeah. Uh, Fred is a longtime friend of mine. In fact, he's one of the keys to my reclaiming my life. You know, when I was complaining about my life, he told me, this is probably like 12 years ago. He said, "Well, Lyndon, you know what? I hear you and I agree with you. You've had some challenges, but here's what I think. If you only spent 50% of your time talking about how bad your life sucks, and then you spent the other 50% of your time trying to find something to be grateful for, you might live a happier life."
So true, isn't it?
He had me right there, you know? It's in my best interest to forgive. Forgiveness is something we do for ourselves. And he, over 20 years, has researched forgiveness with groundbreaking results and all kinds of different applications. And he and I have distilled his research methodology and his methods into this workbook. So this is one we did particularly for people who are in recovery from addictions, but you can read this and the methods are exactly the same for anything in life, you know.
So if people want to get this book, how do they do it? What's the best bet?
Yeah, it's published by New Harbinger Press, and newharbinger.com. That'll take you to the store, or you can get it on amazon.com. Yeah.
And so if they get this book, it seems like you just mentioned, it's a pretty good book, not only for people in recovery, but can help other people as well. What exactly,
Yeah.
if they get the book or start working with it, what do they learn, or what kind of things do they pick up from it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you learn what we mean by forgiveness. Now, this is an evidence-based approach to forgiveness. This is not theology. This is not good ideas. This is stuff that's been researched for over 20 years and found successful. And so you learn that forgiveness is not forgetting. You know, you're forgiven and forget. No, it's not that. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened to you didn't matter. You know, so often we don't forgive because we feel like we're going to let somebody off the hook if we forgive. Absolutely not. You can forgive and still hold someone accountable for treating you poorly. Forgiveness, this is so important, especially for people in recovery. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. You know, there's the theological idea that forgiveness leads to reconciliation. And we think if you can be reconciled, then more power to you. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great thing. But don't wait until you can be reconciled before you forgive, because forgiveness is something you do for yourself. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's you taking stock of your life, making decisions, making amends if you need to, and releasing the burdens. I couldn't forgive Blaine. Let me tell you why. I struggled so much because I was loyal to my suffering. I was treated in a way that I felt I should not have been treated, and the most impossible circumstances you could imagine, doing some of the most gruesome work that anyone can imagine. And I held on to that like, I'm not going to forgive, because if I do, that means that what happened to me didn't matter, or somehow it wasn't that important. I finally discovered that that's ridiculous. You know, if I wait, if I wait until I get an apology before I forgive, I may die in this miserable state. And that's on me. You know, I can't do anything about anyone else, but I can do a lot about myself. And the decision to forgive is something we do for ourselves. That's the kind of stuff you find in our workbook, the principles and the methods of forgiveness, as Fred's worked them out at Stanford over 20 years.
Do they go through exercises to show them how to get to
Yeah,
the point?
yeah. Like one exercise we have is called Change the Channel. I love doing that one. And we kind of, this about halfway through the book. So you have some steps you got to do to get there. But just basically, you know, we all have a remote control in our hands
Right.
that controls the screen that's in our brain, right? We decide what we watch, you know, just like I watch Netflix on my TV at home. You know, I watch certain things in my head and I decide. you know. I can spend all my time watching reruns of I had the worst mother ever in the history of mothers, or my ex-wife is such a jerk, let me tell you why, or hey, I'm Lyndon. I was screwed over by a boss. Let me tell you what he did. You know, you can spend all your time watching those reruns, or you can decide to take care of yourself and change the channel and watch something about gratitude. Because just as every one of us has been victimized in some form or fashion at some point or another, um, we choose whether we're going to stay a victim or not, you know?
And I love the idea of what you're mentioning. So that you make that flip, as you said, to go from being upset and anger, annoyed, to just instead of being happy and grateful, or I
Mhm.
guess the key, almost what you're saying with the examples, is to not keep dwelling on the past, but kind of move where you want to be in the future, or where you want to go ahead.
But I mean, it seems so simple to me now, but it didn't for the 15 years after 9/11. It didn't. I mean, and here's the simple truth. The past is past. You can't change the past. I mean, Lily Tomlin, the comedian, said it best. She said that forgiveness means giving up all hope of a better past. You can't change it. But
Great.
how many of us are trying to change it? I tried to change it. I have advanced degrees in trying to change the past, and not one of them worked.
How quickly can that switch be made?
I don't want to be flip.
Right.
Part of what's going on here is there has to be some legitimate grief. You know, we have to acknowledge and work through our grief. There comes a point where holding on to grief beyond its shelf life is not productive. And we can make that decision, I think, maybe with in conversation with a therapist. But there is a point, there are some kind of guidelines within a year of a loved one's death. We're hoping that people can begin to transition into integration. Um, but grief is an individual thing. It takes different people longer to grieve. And to go through all the stages of grief, the anger, the bargaining, all of that. We see that forgiveness is the fulfillment of the grief process, not one of the steps or a replacement of the grievance process or the grief process. And we
Explain that.
take
Yeah,
we-
in terms of its, would say the final step or the fulfillment, explain
mhm.
that again.
Yeah, it's when we accept and integrate the no that we got in life. And every one of us is going to get a no. It's just part of the way life is set up, and that's what makes life so precious. What got me, Blaine, is that I spent so much of my life in a dark place unnecessarily. And I don't want any of your listeners, to do that, especially people in recovery. This workbook is proven, tried and true. There are steps that can help you retain and build your sobriety and move forward in your life with joy and happiness and let go of the problems of the past.
I like how you said it in terms of letting go of the problems. How quickly can that be done, though? Can it be done overnight? It can be done 6 months. Is there a time framework that you can work through on this?
Well, there again, it's really an individual thing, but there are some benchmarks, and I'm not conversant with them, but generally thinking after a year, the death of a loved one, you should be able to integrate, maybe. I mean, kind of generically speaking, if you lost a job, maybe that's a different time frame. Whatever's reasonable, and I'm not sure what that is. I don't think it's so easy to flip a switch and do it overnight. It takes a lot of processing. And for me, I couldn't do it overnight. If I did it overnight, it would have been because I didn't understand what I was doing. You have to work through the grief process. But there's also incentive to do that because your life gets better when you work through your grievances and you let those things go. One of our one of the other guys I love to quote a lot is a guy named Lou Smedes, who's out somewhere in California. He said that forgiveness is setting a prisoner free, and then after the fact, realizing that the prisoner was you.
Have you found that to be true in your life?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm
Because
just sad I didn't realize it sooner.
because you mentioned some good examples, and a lot of people have gone through them in terms
Yeah,
of divorce, for example,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and just sharing personally, I went through one, and it took me a long time, like you said,
yeah,
give up because I was spending so much time on dwelling on it.
yeah,
It wasn't helpful. It was never helpful. And now I don't think about it at all, which is great. So
yeah. So you had to spend that time. That's your body's, your nervous system's way of integrating the trauma of what happened to you. So I don't want to belittle that. That was really important. But you're at a point now, and this is what Alexandra Saley says. She's a therapist in Beirut, Lebanon. She says that forgiveness is when you can have the memory but not feel the sting. And
so
that's what you have. Yeah.
they say it. But that's all the work you do too. I think we mentioned in the introduction, but the concept is a cool concept that you're the research project coordinator for forgiveness for recovery. What is that?
Uh-huh.
What is that all about?
Well, Fred and I began a conversation years ago, and this workbook is the culmination of about 5 years worth of work and some of that research. We started talking about how we might adapt his methods to be an intervention for people struggling in recovery and to support people in recovery. And Christine Nutt, who's an addictions therapist, she used to live in Brevard, now Charlotte. She was one of the principal people who really hounded me about this. It took her about 2 years before she caught my attention. So, but finally she did, thank goodness. And she's thanked in the credits of the book. But so we adapted the methods for people in recovery and I tested them out. So I did teaching trials at Carolina Behavioral Hospital in Greenville, South Carolina, and at Favor Faces and Voices of Recovery in the upstate of South Carolina in Greenville and some other satellite places around Greenville. And we measured them with a survey to begin the training and a survey after the training so that we could measure what they knew before they started and then measure what they knew after we started. And we showed, and all the teaching trials that we've done up to this point that the forgiveness teachings have been beneficial. And that's a big thing. So we say it's evidence-based. That's not something we take lightly. That's the essential reason for doing the book. We felt, especially Fred, being a Stanford guy, you don't publish anything unless you have the science to back it up. And that demonstrated that it was worth going forward. And just the encounters I had with people in the classes that I taught, this book can change lives. And it's not just this book, it's this forgiveness teaching. This forgiveness teaching would be awesome for churches. It would be awesome for clergy conferences to say, maybe we could bring together a few people, a few chaplains or clergy, and sit and learn this methodology. We do classes for all these. We even do a train the trainer class. It's 32-hour training that we've offered in Hawaii for a number of years for the Department of Human Services in Hawaii. But
And
yeah, so there's training, and we want to do that training. I want to speak to as many folks who want to hear, especially 12-step communities that are listening. I'd love to spend half an hour on a Zoom call with your community or with your staff or an hour, whatever it takes to tell you about these proven results, these proven strategies that bring results for people in recovery and for all of us. We all need this forgiveness.
well, I was just saying, talk about people in recovery, I'm thinking out loud with you. Boy, would this be helpful for students to learn? Would this be helpful had I learned this sometime in my life?
Yes, yes,
Because you learn lots of stuff. You
yes,
mentioned you gave a great example, in terms of when you were in school. and you
Yeah.
learn stuff that has no practical value.
Yeah.
You're never going to use it. But this you
Yeah.
would use every day in your life, not just for
Yes.
people in recovery. But I'm
Yes.
saying you see this as, not just for people in recovery, but for students, you name it.
Every single
So,
person.
and segues into a couple of final questions I want to ask you, and that having to do with kind of moving forward from this. So right now we came out with a workbook. You were telling me off the air, kind of in your spare time for the next couple of months, you're working on a full book itself. And what's it
Yeah.
all about?
It's a memoir, a teaching memoir, actually, about my experiences during and after 9/11. And each chapter has one of Fred's methods kind of incorporated into it. So you see the journey from me leading the rescue mission at Ground Zero from St. Paul's Chapel, and the challenges I had, and leaving that, and then other challenges that I faced, and my leaving my marriage and losing my job and finding all this craps in my lungs and being bitter about that. There are steps in the forgiveness process, and I'm trying to illustrate those in my memoir. So it's a teaching memoir. It's called Forgiveness at Ground Zero, and it'll be out for the 25th anniversary, September 1st, 2026. It's being published by Rowman and Littlefield, which is a division of Bloomsbury. So I'm really excited about that.
And so very cool. And when it comes out, please, we'll have another show with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Explaining the
you.
book.
Yes.
But what's kind of cool is that as your work finishing the book, then you're going to be moving into some other stuff. And you mentioned the forgiveness coaching and forgiveness work. So you'll be available, I guess, when that deadline is passed, to people to speak to, consult with, work with, on somebody working forgiveness.
Absolutely. I've spoken on 6 continents about this work, and I'm not done yet. I'm eager to go wherever anyone's interested in hearing about this work, because let me tell you why. It changed my life. I'm not just someone teaching a good idea. I'm a zealot whose life was changed by it, who doesn't want to see any of your viewers spend another day in misery because of their unforgiveness issues, when we have tools to help them. So that's what I'm about. That's my mission. That's my big church now. It's interfaith and no faith. It's human, because to be human is to be in conflict, you know? It's just what is.
And so if folks want to track down Lyndon Harris, the best bet is to do what?
Yeah.
How do you find him?
You can catch me at my website, lyndonharris.com. You can reach out to me by email. It's lyndonfharris@gmail.com. lyndonfharris@gmail.com. Yeah, so I'm excited to be in touch with your folks, and I'm speaking at a couple of things coming up. I'm going to speak again at the Wild Goose Festival. I don't know if you've covered that before, but it was started by some guys who lived in Swannanoa there. And that's in September. In October, I'm giving an annual keynote address for the Roper St. Francis Hospital system here in Charleston. I'm speaking at a conference in San Francisco in October. So I get around. I'm happy to do it. I love to do it. I'm an extrovert. I'm a former pastor. I love to speak, and especially with the message that I believe so strongly in. And I've seen people's lives changed by adopting these methods, most notably my own.
And all the stuff you do. So we talked about speaking, writing, consulting. Do
Yeah.
you have a favorite thing you do?
Well, gosh, I love all of that. And I'll add on top of that, I love hanging out with my grandchildren. That's why we're in Charleston. My wife, Maria Lund, she was the president and COO of First Son EAP, Employees Assistance Program in Columbia, South Carolina for like 25 years. She retired, and since I'm a writer and speaker, I can work from anywhere. We decided to move to Charleston while our grandkids are in school anyway, you know. And so we're here. We have them every week. We take them to golf lessons. They were interested in that, so we're doing that. My grandson is working on becoming a chess grandmaster, I think. He's 12 and he was beating me about a year ago, and he's 10 times better now. So
Well,
it's crazy, but we love it. My daughter and my son-in-law are here. It's wonderful.
the only bad thing about what you said though, it's that area's game, Asheville's lost, so we're missing Asheville, so it's not quite the same thing, but you're close enough.
Oh, I miss Asheville. I miss it so much. So many friends there. Dave and Nance, Dave Wilcox and Nance Pettit, all those guys. Gareth Higgins and Brian Ammons, all the people. We love Western North Carolina. We kept our cabin, so we're back and forth. We're there and always eager to see folks when we're there.
Well, and then I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of the Lane's World Show. I would like to thank my producer, Captain Cassetti. And one of these days, you'll hopefully even get to meet in person. That'd be great. Thanks, man.
I'd love that. Absolutely. Let's make it happen.
Like,
Thank you.
likewise, good speaking to you, and be well.